I was talking to the Henson people, and I said, "Gee, for all these years, I'd like to get a Muppet, thinking that they would have some little hand Muppet they could send to me. But no, they built a Muppet of me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw the
It's
picture of that.
beautiful.
That is so cool. What do you do with that now? Do you play with it? Is it on display in your house? Welcome back to Puppeteers. We're your hosts, Adam Krutinger
And Cameron Garrity.
and today we're talking to the puppet fleece legend, Larry Guild.
Yes, for those who don't know Larry or his work, he is really like the guy who supplied all of our community with the magical Antron Fleece. And we're so excited to talk to him today about his work with everything from Jim Henson to theme parks to Macon Barney. And Larry Guild, welcome to Puppeteers.
All right, what would you like to know?
Well, first of all, thanks so much for coming on. And we kind of wanted to just start off with, I think the best place to start is just kind of how did you get connected to the puppetry world? And when exactly was that? Do you remember?
Oh, boy, it's a long time ago. We were doing a fabric trade show in New York City, and somebody from Jim Henson's organization came in and saw the fabric, which we were selling at the time for a variety of things, primarily for men's outerwear jackets and as a shoe liner and a variety of other purposes. And they asked me to come up to their offices and show them what we could do. And I went up to their place in New York, and that's how it started. And the fabric was a very basic commercial fabric at the time. We were in the process of switching it from a basic nylon to a Antron nylon. We were selling it at the time, to people like Champion Sportswear, and they were making warm-up suits for basketball teams, and they liked the brighter sparkle from the Antron under the lights, and that was the appeal that the Henson people had. And I don't know, it goes back to probably 1970.
Wow, 1970.
And we made an order for Henson of Kermit Green and Miss Piggy Pink, and it just sort of came along gradually, and we had just a handful of customers, like Skolin Industries and
Yeah.
Custom out in California, and Shafton in California.
That's so cool. When you went to the when you went to the Henson studio, did you meet with Jim Henson himself, or was it with some other people and other builders?
No, it was a group of people. I don't remember at this point.
Okay, no, that's okay. That's so cool. So then when they chose a fabric, or when you showed them what you could do, was it more of selecting one of these fleeces, or did you kind of were you able to kind of create a special fleece that geared more toward their needs?
No, it was just a standard fleece that we're selling to other trades, other industries.
Wow, okay, that's really cool. Now you mentioned that it was a nylon fiber, and then you switched to the Antron fiber. Now an Antron is just it is a nylon, but it's a specific type of nylon. Do you know why?
Yes.
Why was it switched to Antron? You said because of that sparkle that it had.
Yes.
Wow. Okay.
and it was shown nicely out of lights in studios and actually on the basketball courts. The same fabric job we did was for the New York Knicks basketball team. We dyed fabric for them at one point. And it just seemed to go along gradually, and we'd pick up a customer here and there, and we eventually got involved with a concern called Georgia Stage down in Atlanta,
Mm-hmm.
and we would make the fabric, and they used to, and they still do, cut the fabric and sell small yardages to people.
Yeah, they were like your main distributor for a while before you sold to them. Yeah. Wow.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm friends with the people over at Georgia Stage too, so I've got a little bit of a connection with them.
Yeah.
At one point, our family decided that they were going to cut back on the size of our operation, and I took over the sales part, and they decided that they weren't going to manufacture the Antron anymore because it wasn't a big volume item. And I went to a competitive of ours, which was a concern called Hardwick Fabrics, and they were familiar with making the fabric, and so they made the fabric for me for, I don't know, 8 or 10 years, and we would make it there and either drop ship large quantities to customers, or we ship it to Georgia Stage.
And which one was that again? That wasn't the Antron anymore. That was after the Antron Fleece.
No, it was still Antron.
Oh, it's still Antron at that time. Okay. Wow.
Then at some point, Dupont dropped Antron, and we just went to a bright nylon.
Got it.
Yeah, that's the 12-ounce nylon fleece, right?
Well, we made two weights for a while. We made a 12-ounce and a 10-ounce, and the 12-ounce went to full-size theme park characters, and the 10-ounce went to puppets because it was stretchier and it was easier for them to make the small figures.
Wow.
And Larry, when you
unfortunately, West Warren, Hardwick went out of business, and before they went out of business, we made a deal with them, and they made about a year's supply of fabric for me, and I had to go out and borrow a lot of money to pay for it, and but we kept the thing going, and I eventually found somebody in North Carolina that could make it for me, and they made it for me for a year or two, and then they went out of business. And we finally made an agreement with another knitter and dyer, and they made the fabric for us at the end when I was running it. We then had yarn supplier problems. You see, it's such a small amount of fabric. It's a nuisance for most mills to run. I mean, I was running maybe 2,000 yards a month, and they run 2,000 yards in 4 hours.
Yeah.
And so we had built up a lot of personal relationships, and they were willing to keep going with us, and it kept building up. And we when some of the larger people like Disney and Rainbow in England got on board, and custom characters got bigger and bigger, and it became a fairly sizable operation. And then we only supplied white. We never did colors after the original order we did for Henson, because we had to dye 1,000 yards at a time of a color, and that was more than most people could handle. Eventually, we were doing enough volume that the dye house that I was using in North Carolina was willing to put in a small dye kettle, and we could dye 250 yards at a time. And that increased the volume of business that we're doing because people could get custom colors. I don't know.
Wow.
That's amazing.
So we had a lot of changes in yarn availability and in availability of getting people to make the fabric for us. But we kept plugging along because we had wonderful customers, and the customers were more than customers. We were all kind of friends, and we were in the thing together, and we were able to do things and swap. If somebody needed something desperately and somebody else had it, we'd make arrangements to have one customer send a roll over to another to somebody else that was in need, and so we all worked together, and it was really fun. I dealt with some wonderful people, and some of it was kind of unique. We dealt with oh God, I'm losing memory. One of the big theme park people, I was supplying their own fabricator, and then that fabricator, they meshed with the major company, and they came to us and wanted to buy the fabric, but they wouldn't buy it unless I gave them a financial statement, and I wouldn't do that. And they ended up buying my fabric through Georgia Stage. So it was kind of unique and kind of fun, and but I got older and the pressures got greater, and it was harder to ship. UPS became very difficult to deal with, and the yarn suppliers were giving us a hard time and not making as good a quality of yarn that we were used to. And so I'd always had an arrangement with the original owner of Georgia Stage. There was a man and his son, and they sold the business to the current owners. And at 84 years old, I just called them up one day and asked them if they wanted to buy it, and they bought it, and I hope they're still running it, and I hope they're still doing well, because they seem like very nice people.
Yeah, they're definitely still running it, and they're definitely still doing well. Like I mentioned, I was just on a call with them not too long ago. We did a recent collaboration, and they're still, I don't know if you know, they recently, they said they worked with you on the latest iteration of the fleece, which was a 13.75 ounce fleece that they now trademarked the name Nyla Fleece. And that's what that's their main fleece that they're building now. And they've got a nice little story about you on there, about how you say it's one of the nicest fleeces you've seen in all the years of you making puppet fleece. So yeah, that's great that they're able to carry on your legacy.
Yeah.
Well, it was fun, and I don't know, but at the end, I was talking to the Henson people, and I said, "Gee, for all these years, I'd like to get a Muppet," thinking that they would have some little hand Muppet they could send to me. But no, they built a Muppet of me.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
saw the
It's
picture of that.
beautiful.
That is so cool. What do you do with that now? Do you play with it? Is it on display in your house?
Yeah, it's on display at my house.
That is amazing. Oh my
It's
goodness.
not what we expected. When the UPS guy came to the door and we saw this large box, it was a little overwhelming.
Oh my God.
But it's fun.
When was that you got that puppet? Do you remember about?
4 years ago.
Oh, really? Okay, I didn't
Wow.
realize it was that recent. Holy cow,
Yep.
that's so awesome. It looks awesome. It looks,
Yeah, it does.
It really captures your likeness, and what a tribute it is for you to be made a puppet out of your own puppet fleece that you've been creating for
Yep.
this company for so many years. That's amazing.
But gee, we had some good customers.
Oh yeah.
The people in England, the Rainbow people, were really interested and fun to deal with. The custom characters was terrific.
Yeah, actually had a question for you too. In the beginning, I'm trying to understand. Were you actually a manufacturer of the fleece? Did you actually have your own machines actually knitting?
We did
it?
originally.
Okay.
Yeah, we did originally in Laconia. Yes.
But then it became too much volume for you to do. Is that why you stopped doing it? Am I understanding that?
Too little volume.
Oh, too little volume for you to do yourself. I see. Oh,
Yep.
okay. I see. Interesting.
It
Wow.
wasn't. It just wasn't cost effective to run the machine.
I imagine that you have to let's say, I'm assuming maybe how many machines did you have? Did you have just one?
Well, in total, we had about 30.
Wow, 30. So I imagine each.
But on that fabric, we only had one.
Yeah. So and I imagine the machine has to be like perfectly calibrated for the settings to create that fleece. And if you're not doing enough volume, it's a waste to have it set up for that, and probably a pain to reset it up for another fleece for another customer, and then you're just having to redo it. So yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I understand that. Yeah. Then you farm it out, and it's hard to keep up quality control when you're not the ones doing it. But
Exactly.
yeah, holy cow.
Yeah. Well, when we did it with hardwood fabrics, the fabric was perfect. They were terrific. But like everything in the textile world in the 70s and 80s, you just couldn't compete, and they were a very large volume operation, and they didn't have enough business to operate on all their fabrics, and they just closed after 100 years.
Wow, holy cow.
Larry, when you first started, selling this fabric, you mentioned that it was used inside of shoes and in clothing. What was your first thought when all of a sudden you get a call from this Muppet company, and they were using it in such a sort of oddball and creative way that had to be pretty shocking for you to find out that it had this newfound use?
It's always fun when you find something that's unusual and it gets out of the main line, and it can be a little more profitable because you're doing small quantities. But at some point, the quantity gets too small and you can't make any money on it. But we were selling it for some very strange things. We had two companies out in the West that were making blankets with the fabric and as inserts and sleeping bags, because if the water people would take them on canoe trips, and if it got wet, it dried very easily. And the real reason that the fabric had been successful is that it dyed so easily.
Yes.
All our customers, when we did just white, were dyeing it with Rit dye in wash machines. And the reason they succeeded was that people could do that, and they didn't have to have a lot of inventory. People kept asking me, why aren't you making this out of Orlon or polyester? Well, polyester is a real tough thing to dye, and it's got to be dyed under pressure. And Orlon is too soft. So the nylon, whether it was nylon or Antron, dyed very easily in a variety of colors. So most of the customers mix their own colors, and it was very easy for them to. They just needed 5 yards. They could dye 5 yards of a particular shade that they could not get in any other fabric that wasn't nylon.
Wow, that's such a good point. That does make sense. And again, you being able to it helps you too, because then you only have to really make one color, and it can really satisfy most people. Then it can dye it to their needs. But I had another question too about the process of making it. So now I understand how knit machines work. However, there's many knit fabrics that don't have that kind of fluffy pile on it. What is the process that actually creates that pile on the fabric?
Well, when the fabric comes off a knitting machine, it looks like a terry cloth. There's a whole bunch of loops, and then it gets dyed, and then it goes over a napping machine that breaks all those loops and gives you the fleece.
Okay, so there's when you say dyeing too, it went through a dye process even though it was white?
Yes.
Okay, interesting. Why is that?
Well, because the yarn was a yellowy color.
Oh, okay, so it's all kind of like bleaching it then.
Yeah, and the people that were dyeing with a Rit dye couldn't get good color if you didn't have it dyed white.
Interesting. And then what was that that machine you mentioned that rips all the loops?
The napping machine.
The napping machine. What does that do exactly, the napping machine?
Well, it breaks the loops.
Yeah, how does it though? I guess if I'm imagining, is it like you lay the fabric down flat and it rolls it through and somehow?
No, it's a big round cylinder, and it rotates at very high speed, and you just feed the fabric into it, and it just breaks the loops. It goes in one side of loops, and it comes out the other side napped, or with a broken loop or the pile.
Wow. So that just really it rips all those things, and that's what makes it fluffier too, right?
Exactly.
Wow. That's so interesting, because I feel like so many people think of it as probably just like a relatively one-step process of just knitting it, knitting it a certain way. Yeah. That's so interesting that it goes through all those multiple steps just to create that. So was there a certain amount? Could you on the napping machine, could you overdo it and could you underdo it then? Is there a certain amount of time that was the sweet spot?
Yeah, you could adjust it. You can there's a variety of things you can do with it. You can electrify it, make it stand up, or you could lay it down. There are a variety of things you can do.
Wow.
Yeah. And was it the fibers themselves that gave the fabric its sort of sheen that you had mentioned, or was it one of the steps of this process?
No, it's a process. The yarn is just, the fiber is just basic commercial fiber that's used for a variety of things.
Wow.
Gotcha.
What was I don't know if you'd even remember this perhaps, but the knitting machine, was there a certain like make or model number that you remember by any chance, just out of curiosity, that you used to use? No. Wow. Where did you get the machine? Is it something you made?
No, it's a standard knitting machine.
Standard knitting.
Gotcha.
How big is it?
It's big.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I've looked up, in preparation for this call. I'm partially sounding like I know less than I do, just to let the people listening kind of go on the ride with us a little bit. But in looking up, knitting manufacturers, these are humongous machines that I'm seeing. So I'm just trying to get a grasp if that's the same kind of caliber, because obviously, again, there's probably different styles, different sizes for different needs. I know some of these knitting machines knit the fabric into a tube. As well.
They all do.
Oh, they all do. Oh, okay. So it was knit into a tube, and then it was put onto this napping machine around that cylinder, and then that's what gets the naps out, and then you just cut it up the back to make it into a sheet of fabric.
That's correct.
Wow.
Yep.
Wow.
That's amazing. And Larry, what were
There's
you
a
doing?
lot of processes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, I bet.
And you got to know what you're doing, or you mess it up. It's easy to mess it up.
So then, I want to say, do not for a second expect you to remember this. Probably 10 years ago, I bought a roll directly from you, which was an interesting experience for me being in my early 20s, because it was the first time I ever had to buy something through a phone call, because everything was on the internet that I'd ever order. And the first time I ever had to pay for something mailing a check, which was a really fun experience for me. But when I ordered that roll, I want to say, how many yards were on it? Probably, was it 60 yards on a roll generally?
Yes.
Yeah, about 60 yards on the roll.
Between 35 and 50 yards.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, it was probably 50. So I had a 50-yard roll. So that 50 yards then, that is, if the salvage edge is on the outsides, which it is, right? So then,
yes.
So that means when you knit that, it was how long would that tube have been when it was knit? Was that cut into multiple rolls, or do you knit enough for one roll at a time?
One roll at a time.
One roll at a time. So then you knitted about 50 yards, and the length is, so the width of the fabric is okay. So then how does it get that that salvage? I know if a lot of people listening who use this kind of this fleece know that salvage edge that it has on the sides doesn't feel like a cut edge to me. It feels so different. Do you know what I'm talking about? What makes it so different than in the center?
Well, when it's cut, and it's opened, then there's a glue that's put on the edge to keep the salvage from rolling.
Oh my goodness.
The salvage would curl under if it didn't have something on it to stabilize it.
It's so interesting to think that that's an extra step in the process to essentially make what is to most people a raw material.
Right.
So that's wow. Holy cow. That obviously it makes perfect sense, because many knits are known to the nature of a knit versus a woven. So if people don't know, woven fabrics have many, 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 many different strings that come together and are literally woven together. And for a knit, it's essentially typically a single. Well, there's two different types of knits. Most knits are a single strand that is just essentially knit, almost like crocheting if you think about it. The way it just keeps rolling in on itself. So in that way, it's easy to have, a cut edge that could essentially make a lot of it unravel. So that gluing would prevent that.
See, what happens is when the fabric is knit, the tube is 30 inches across, or if you open it, it would be 60 inches.
Yeah.
When you nap it, the energy from the napper to break those loops brings the fabric in very narrow. So it may go from 30-inch tube to a 20-inch tube. Then when you open it, it goes on a large frame that frames it back out. And in the case of this particular fabric, you couldn't frame it back out to the 60 inches. We had to settle at about 54 to 56 inches was the best we could bring it back out to. And then the edges are treated so that it doesn't curl.
Wow, that is so. Let's say you were gonna make one roll of the fleece, from fiber to the roll. How long does the whole process from knitting and dyeing and napping and gluing? How long does it take to make essentially one roll?
Oh, maybe a half hour.
Really?
Wow.
No way! Oh my gosh! It can knit that much, and then the napping process is that quick?
Yep.
Wow, and I would have thought the dyeing process would take a while,
I mean,
like even to dry or whatever.
people have no conception of how much yardage is produced.
Sure.
The one basic knitting machine could turn out probably 5 rolls in 8 hours, and once it starts to be finished, it's gonna. Well, you couldn't do one roll. One
Yeah.
roll.
Sure.
The feeding of the machine takes a whole roll, so you have to do about 10 rolls at a time, and those 10 rolls can be run in a half hour. So.
Holy cow! Now,
So this is why it's so difficult. I mean, lots of people want to try to duplicate the fabric, but they don't realize, unless you have years of contact with people and have friendships and favors, most people don't want to run the fabric because it's just not economical. I mean,
it's not enough volume coming out.
Yeah, you'd think if anyone would do it, the Muppets would have, at some point started to make the fabric themselves. But no, they relied on folks like you.
Well, because even then they don't use enough of it. I'm sure.
No, of course not.
Well,
no, they use very little. In fact, at the end, I actually traded them 2 rolls of fabric for my Muppet, and that's going to last. It probably lasted for 6 months to a year.
Oh yeah, no, I can imagine.
It's the full size. It's the full size characters that use the real volume.
Right.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah, because the first time I went to the Muppet Workshop, that's when I realized how little of it they probably really use. Because other than for their builds for other countries, I don't think they do a whole lot of like brand new builds, even under probably a yearly basis. Too much, because and the example I remember from that is them showing me the old puppet of the Count from Sesame Street. And they pulled it out, and it was gorgeous. I was like, "Oh my goodness!" And I said, "By any chance, do you happen to know how old this puppet is?" And they said, "Oh, let me look at the tag." And they pull it out, and it said 1983. I'm like, "Oh my gosh!" If they're using a Count puppet from older than me, I mean, like, oh my gosh, it's not like they're rebuilding these characters constantly. Of course, sometimes they just did stuff for the new Fraggle and stuff, and there's still a need for it. But yeah, they're just not using that volume like that. Well, let me ask you this, Larry. How much, in your guess, in your estimate, how much volume would you need to sell yearly in order to make it really worth it for a company that would want to do this? How many yards a year, or how many rolls a year?
Well, you'd have to do between 20 and 30,000 yards.
That's a lot of puppets.
Yeah.
That's a lot of puppets. Oh my goodness. Wow.
Well, let's put it this way. When my guy in Massachusetts was going to close, the people that were making Barney came to us and said, "You can't stop making. We got to have fabric for Barney." And at that particular point, Dupont had told us they would stop making the Antron. And whatever the company was, I lost track now who the company was. It's changed hands a few times. they went and they were going to sue Dupont to make Dupont continue to run Antron for this purpose. And Dupont just laughed at him.
Barney wanted to sue Dupont so they could keep making fabric. My God.
So they died. Oh, we had a hell of a time matching that color.
Oh, I bet.
But we died 2,000 yards for them.
Wow.
And I know, well, when I stopped working I know that 2 customers of mine still have Barney Purple that they bought from the company when it closed down in Texas.
Wow, look at that. They ended up closing anyway. So
Yeah.
that lawsuit wouldn't have helped them too much. Oh, my goodness.
So Barney Purple has been around a long time, and they never had a chance to use it. They had enough to run for 2 or 3 years.
Wow. Oh, my goodness. Yeah.
Wow.
How many Barneys do you need to make? There's too many Barneys already, I think.
Yeah.
As far as, well, Larry, let me ask you this, too. You mentioned, so DuPont, maybe I misheard something earlier. So DuPont stopped making the Antron, or they just stopped making it available for that purpose because they were focused on other markets?
They stopped producing the yarn in the size yarn we needed. They continued to make it for rugs and other purpose, but they stopped making it for what we call outerwear.
Okay. So there's like different weights, and you needed a lightweight essentially for this puppet fleece, but these heavier weights they kept making because there's so much carpet production and other things like that. That makes a lot of sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Wow.
The volume is, the people that we work with, a knitting mill, normal knitting mill, probably has to turn out 10,000 yards a week, and to make money. And the finishing plants, the plants that dye and finish the fabric, they got to run 15,000, 20,000 yards a week. I mean, it takes big volume, and once they start to run, they run 7 days a week, and that's the only way they make money. And so you add our little piddly amount that we were doing, and you can see why we got, customers got frustrated with us at times that we didn't have any inventory. Well, we had to wait our time. We had to wait until things slowed up a bit, and they want to stick our stuff in. So it's been an adventure. So.
Absolutely. And so what first brought you into this world of fabric? Because you mentioned you were doing it until you were 84.
My family had a textile plant here in Laconia, New Hampshire.
Gotcha. So it was the family business.
Yep.
Wow. What was the exact name of the company again?
Well, it was Guile Mills Corporation.
Okay, Guile Mills. Oh, is that how you pronounce your name? Guiled?
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Oh, okay.
Almost everyone says guild that I've heard. Guiled. Okay.
No, it's been Guile since 1640 when they settled in Dedham, Massachusetts.
There you go.
Oh my gosh.
Some nice family history there.
That is amazing. Holy cow. Holy cow. What out of curiosity, because I know you said you've seen things that the Muppets have done. You've seen some Barney stuff and some other companies as well that have produced some amazing things. Had many people over the years that you've worked with shared things that they've made just to kind of show you what they're doing with the fabric? Oh, not really.
No, people are very close to the vest. A lot of them are dealing with agreements with whoever they're making for, and it's. I had one instance where a I think it was Knott's Dairy Farm, Knott's, whatever it's called in California, called and wanted to buy 250 yards of a particular color. And that color belonged to Custom Characters. And so I called Custom Characters and said, what do you want to do? Do I make it for them or not? And they said, yeah, go ahead, make it for them. So, and anytime when I asked the Henson people if I could get a character, they said no, everything is under licensees with people.
Oh,
and,
of course, yeah.
People are very careful with their licenses. So.
Oh yeah, you're right.
Certainly.
A lot of, even myself, sometimes I have NDAs where I can't talk about a project till after it's published, and sometimes by then, you forget to circle back around. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
But all that being said, you knew that your product was being used by the Henson Company and by Barney, as Adam said, or in theme parks. What kind of pride or ownership did that make you feel? You must have felt like you were a part of these projects in a way. What was it like to see that these characters come to life all over the world?
Oh, it's great. It's terrific. I enjoy it. I can tell one of my people right off, especially the theme park characters and the athletic characters, college characters that.
Yeah, the mascots and such.
Oh, the mascots, yeah.
Yeah, we have several people that make those type of things, both here in this country and up in Canada. And it's kind of fun on television. I can tell a lot of the faces are made out of our stuff.
Yeah, I can imagine your kids, or if you have grandkids, being they're watching Sesame Street and hey, guess what? I made that fabric that puppet's made out of.
And guess what? They don't care.
That's right. Yeah. Oh yeah. We're getting really to the nitty gritty. You got to be a real puppet nerd to be interested in the process of the making of puppet fleece. But no, that makes a lot of sense. Do you happen to remember, or did you get to see or touch the fabric that the Henson was using for the puppets before? If you were to look at them both next to each other, would you be able to compare them?
Those early 1950s, 1960 puppets before they were working with you guys?
Oh, I don't know. That's.
Yeah. You're just pitching
each person looks at things differently. I would have a hard time comparing stuff. I know the stuff that Georgia Stage is doing now is a little different than what I did, but it's just as good. But it's you have to go with the flow. I mean, today it's not easy in the textile business, and it was one of the things that was easy for us is that most of our customers are having so much difficulty getting other fabric from offshore or domestically, and I guess they knew they could rely on us to always come up with something. So I guess that was a good part of our business, that people designed stuff to use our fabric because they knew they could get it, where they had a real hard time with other type of plushes and things. But that's the world of the way it is today. Everything is, probably 80% of all the fabrics in this country come from offshore. And it's pretty tough when you buy something from China and you got to pay in advance for it, and you hope that the boat doesn't sink, and you hope when you get it, it's what you ordered because you've already paid for it. So I think they found it easy I hope they found it easy to deal with us. And
I don't think you get a Muppet if you're not easy to work with.
Yeah, that's right.
So
Yeah. What? One more thing I was just wondering too. In this puppetry world, we call the original, we call it Antron Fleece. Then we call it 12-ounce nylon fleece. We call it Nyla fleece. A lot of people are using another nylon loop fleece as well. Does that knit fabric that goes through that napping process, does that technically have a term for that type of knit fabric?
No,
It
just being napped.
Just a nap fabric.
Just a napped fabric. Okay. So, because I can imagine there's many different types of napped fabrics as well, and even other knits. So really, it's just like most things, like most plastics and even like foam manufacturing. It's probably more a matter of a catalog number rather than having a specific term for the type of fabric. Then probably, right?
No, it's trial and error.
Trial and error. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, does it look right? Then it is right.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of errors.
Yeah,
I bet.
Yeah, that's got to be hard too.
Anybody that wants to duplicate the fabric, it's not as easy as it may sound.
Yeah, no, I think that's again, being in the puppetry world, there's been a lot of I don't know what to call it, scares, I guess, of just like supply running out, because the original Antron Fleece stopped being manufactured in 05, I think, or 06,
something like that.
05, or I think it was 05. And then, people were buying up as much as they can. And for a couple of years, not so much anymore, maybe a puppeteer that was retiring would like sell their leftover on eBay. Like, oh, I have 20 yards left, and people would buy it up and it'd go for really kind of insane prices. And then the 12-ounce nylon, but that was officially stopped being produced a couple years, I think maybe 2 or 3 years ago. But officially, the final stock ran out this past December. So again, people are buying up as much of it as they can, and like you said, and especially as artists, we just have to be resourceful in trying to find things that work, and I think what this is a testament to more than anything is trying to help support the people who are producing these fabrics.
Yeah, and have an understanding for the process. As you mentioned, volume is such an important thing, and just being respectful and understanding of the people who are doing their best to make it happen.
Yeah, and not just the people selling it too, but like specifically the people who are manufacturing it. Because again, learning this information from you about like the amount of volume you'd need to sell in order to make it even really worth doing in a way. And what I'm learning is just what a favor it was what you did for the puppetry community since the 70s, producing this fabric that really wasn't, that economically and from a business standpoint made no sense for you to do.
Well, we did okay. Let's put it that
way. Well, we're very, very glad to hear that, Larry. One last thing for you, if you have a second.
Yeah. So you mentioned the trial and error of the process, and we love hearing from people who work in the puppetry community if they have a puppeteer story, as we say, of a time where something didn't go right in the process. You wanted to maybe pull your hair out in the moment, but now looking back in hindsight, you could kind of laugh at that moment and laugh at that mistake. Do you have any story like that you could share?
No, but
Did your shirt ever get caught in the knitting machine or something?
No, but I got a lot of fabric that we dyed and it didn't come out right.
Sure. Well, what would you guys do with that? Would you be able to sell it as like remnants or something, a misprint type thing?
Well, see that again, you have to have places to get rid of fabric, get rid of stuff. And over the years, I had found 1 or 2 places that had nothing to do with puppets or full-size characters. They used the thing for industrial purposes, and they didn't care what the color was. They didn't care whether it had holes in it. They didn't care what it was, as long as they could buy it cheap. And you have to have an outlet to dump stuff, and God help you if you don't, because you're going to have a warehouse full of seconds that nobody wants, and you have to build that into your pricing, and because you don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. If your fabric is run on the third shift, it may not be as good as the stuff that's run on the first shift, and you just don't push a button and have the stuff come out the way you want it. And if you're going into that type of business, you've got to be aware that you're going to have maybe 10, 15, 20% seconds. And you got to figure that into your cost. Because some of it, at the end, when I sold out to them, I had probably 300 yards or 400 yards of seconds, and it went to the dump. And so, at $10 a yard, that's a lot of money.
Right.
Yeah, no, you're right. That's great advice. Even the puppet builders, for factoring that into your price of building a puppet. Sometimes you have to do a mock-up, or something turns out wrong, and you have to fix it. And otherwise, that expense lands on you. So it is something you have to kind of work into your price, even if sometimes you don't have that problem, to cover you when you do have that problem. So things kind of even out. So that's really great advice, Larry. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Well, Larry, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. We really appreciate your time, and the whole puppetry community really appreciates everything that you've done over the years of supplying this fabric. You're a legend in the puppetry world, and again, we all thank you for that and for your time today.
Well, thank you for calling, and it's been my pleasure.
All right. Thanks, Larry. Have a nice day.
Okay. Bye now.
Bye now. We're at the end of another episode of Puppeteers, but the fun doesn't stop here.
Visit puppeteers.com for show notes and links to projects mentioned in this episode.
Make sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at PuppeteersPod, where we're posting new things every day.
Puppeteers is edited by Matt Bowen and made possible thanks to viewers like you.
If you enjoy this content, you can join our incredible Patreon patrons who are supporting the show for as little as $1 per episode. Those folks get access to early releases, uncut episodes, official Cup O tiers just like we use on the show, and can even submit interview questions for our guests. Go to patreon.com/puppeteerspod to learn more.
Another great way to support Puppeteers is rating and reviewing us on iTunes, leaving a comment or subscribing to this channel, or tell a friend about your favorite episode.
Thanks again for joining us on Puppeteers Puppetry Shop Talk, in-depth interviews with the world's most passionate puppeteers.
Hosted by me, Adam Krutinger.
And me, Cameron Garrity.
Who are you? Why do you want to interview me?
You're such a, I don't know how much you know it, but a lot of people in the community, your name is kind of a legend in the puppetry world. So we wanted to be able to talk to the man himself and just get a little bit more about the history of the puppet fleece.
Okay. All right, what would you like to know?